Okay.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Cactus Lounge. I am Donna Reed. I traveled in Up with People in 1976. And my guest today is not named Terry, even though that's what you're going to see when you look at this. This is Steve Woods, and he's using his wife's computer, I guess, at this point. So, hi, Steve.
Hi. Hi, Donna.
Welcome. Thank you for joining. Are you home and in Colorado right now? Is that where
I'm
you're?
in Colorado in my office, and
Okay.
it's a beautiful day out. We may have some rain this afternoon, but it's been great. Great summer.
I can see the natural light coming in.
Absolutely.
I was thinking about this when we were chatting before I started recording. Are those your paintings behind you? Because a couple of these are
Uh,
my paintings behind me.
I know. I know. I was going to ask you. Yes, they are mine, and I was going to ask you about yours and if
Yeah,
you're still painting.
that's funny because I have a picture of you and I and Steve Caldwell sitting at one of the reunions talking about our art, you
Yeah,
know?
that's
So
right.
how fun.
Yeah.
So Steve, by the way, Heidi was here yesterday, Heidi
Oh,
Saul,
great.
and I think she said she saw you in Santa Fe at the
Yep.
nice, nice. She it was really good for her to be there. And so for those people who don't know, you were at a gathering of, was it MRA 65 to like what was that group that got together there?
They were in the first three casts that were created, the first original cast. So cast A in 65, cast B in 66, and cast C, I think was 67. So, or beginning of, end of summer of 66. So I think it was the original three casts that were there, and
Wow.
that was it. And it was just a fun reunion. The problem is it was very hard recognizing a lot of people because
If you haven't seen somebody for
we
50 or
haven't,
60.
most of them we'd not seen, any of us had seen in, 50 years. So
Wow.
we all had these name tags, and
Did you have great big ones with big
yeah, they were
letters?
big ones. And the first thing you do is look at the name tag. The problem was it was only printed on one side. So during the course of the 3 days, of course, they would flip over. So you'd come up to a person you'd spoken to maybe five times, but their name tag had flipped, so you didn't know who you were talking to. Say, turn your name tag over, would you?
It's funny, but it's so true.
It was very true.
Oh my gosh. So, I think, you and I chatted a little bit before we agreed to do this, and you were actually at Mackinac Island, right? Is that correct?
Yes.
And was that part of MRA? Because I think there's a whole lot of people, and I've been learning about MRA to sing out to Up with People. Like, what was that transition? So, when you were in Mackinac, was that an MRA thing?
It was. It was sponsored by MRA called Modernizing America, and it was an international group. There were a lot of Europeans, Africans.
Yep.
MRA had done a great job in organizing this thing.
Okay.
Um, John Sayer and Rusty Wales, the two Olympic athletes that most people know about,
Yep.
were kind of went out the year before and recruited people around the country. And so that's what the organization of it was, MRA.
Okay.
Um, a lot of the people there, most of the people there really didn't know what MRA was. I happened to know because my mother had been involved as a volunteer and had been involved for several years. So I was aware of it, but I had never been actually involved in it other than being aware and going to a few of the MRA events in Los Angeles.
Yeah. Yeah. That's interesting because when Heidi and I were talking, we were talking about how old she was. And as she said, she was 7 at Mackinac. And talk about not recognizing people, right?
Yeah, yeah,
From 7 to gray hair, right? That's
exactly.
the transition.
She
But
still looks great though, by the way.
oh yeah, oh
She
yeah.
looks fantastic.
Yeah, she does. She does. And I understand she looks like her mother. I didn't know her mother, but a lot of people told her she looked like her
Hmm.
mother. So
Yeah,
I think it was very cathartic for her to be there,
yeah.
you know? So we have so many people here. And to be fair, the majority of people that listen to this are the older people. Now, the older people might be age 45 and above or 50 and above, but our kids that are raising kids right now, they're not on here as much, right? they're busy having babies and work and stuff. So I think that there's probably a good number of people who have heard about MRA. Now, I have to tell you, when I joined, it was during the bicentennial. It was the fall of 75, going into 76. I had never heard of Up With People. I had never heard of Sing Out. And certainly I had not heard of MRA.
Right.
So, so I wonder what percentage of us know anything about anything. You know, we make these judgments, and you're here today as part of the Up With People Alumni Association.
Right.
So did you then do a sing out thing before Up With People, or what was that like, that transition?
All right. Well, that was the main focus after this conference was they had different workshops at the Mackinac
Okay.
conference. And one of them was the music workshop. They had a drama workshop and they had different workshops. And we all were kind of in different workshops. The music workshop was really led by the Caldwells and others.
Okay.
And that was producing the sing out the show every week. It was a Hootenanny show,
Oh,
and one of the names of it was Sing Out. They said we're going to do a Sing Out Hootenanny,
okay.
and that happened every week in a big tent. I was part of the drama workshop with Glenn Close, by the
Ooh,
way.
yeah.
Yeah, I know. I taught her everything she knows, by the way.
Way to go.
But that is really the genesis of the Sing Out show was created during those 1 week shows. And at the end of the summer, towards the end of the summer, they put it all together and created the best of the summer and
Yep.
created this show and called it Sing Out. And it was then invited by several senators and congressmen who'd seen who'd been to Mackinac to the conference, and we were invited to go to Cape Cod at
Oh,
the end of the summer. So those of us, and I was invited to join this musical group because I'd been in the acting part, and I guess they needed more people. I don't know.
they
So
always
we
needed
went.
guys, probably, Steve. We were
Right. Well, there were a lot of guys there. I think I'd won some award. I won the best acting award for something, and so
okay.
I was invited to go. Glenn was going to go, and
Yeah.
that cast went. Then they took the group in buses to Cape Cod.
Okay.
That was the beginning of the Sing Out show, the traveling show, and from that point on, it was called Sing Out. And for the
Wow.
next 2 years, it was Sing Out slash Up With People because the song Up With People really kind of epitomized the whole message of the music that was coming out and the young people. And it was kind of a juxtaposition to the time in the
Right.
world. So
Yeah.
um, that's kind of where it started. And for 2 years, it was Sing Out slash Up With People, sponsored by Moral Rearmament. They
Oh, okay.
sponsored it. They put the organization in place. They had a lot of people volunteering around the country that helped. They had a large volunteer staff, and they ran up Sing Out Up With People for until 68, really, the beginning of 68, when it incorporated, when Latin Belk and others uh, split off from MRA. They realized they had something completely different than
Right.
Moral Rearmament, and they decided to split off. And so it was reincorporated as an educational institution in 68, early 68.
Okay.
And there was some holdover. A lot of the
Right.
staff from MRA kind of carried on into Sing Out Up With People.
Okay.
But anyway, I hope
So,
that's not
yeah,
too
no,
long an
that's a
answer.
really good for me to know, because again, as somebody who never heard any of this, if I didn't know Heidi, I wouldn't know anything about anything related to this. So so then the singer, the Caldwells were there, and was Frank Fields participating at that time? Like who and did that music then that they wrote that summer become the songs in the sing out that you started with? Is that how it?
Absolutely. That was the first show, Sing Out
Yeah.
65. It was Sing Out 65 slash
Yeah.
Up With People, was all of the music that was created at Mackinac during that summer, during those weekend Hootenanny shows. that music was the traveling show then that went on the road at the end of the summer of 65.
Okay.
And then eventually new music was starting to be written and incorporated into the show.
Okay.
But the first three casts of Up With People all had the same music initially, and then very quickly they started writing new material that was put into the show.
Interesting. Okay, so now, like, one of my, a couple of my cast members who were already out of college when I traveled, and I was just freshly 18, which, by the way, you were had admissions, I believe, at that point. It was
Well,
Bruce Harris, and then Dale Penny, and then I think you that sent me a letter and said I could come. So thanks.
I think it may have been my wife, actually,
Oh,
Terry.
that could be that.
I I think by the bicentennial year, I was actually doing the scheduling and booking of the tours. But
Oh, okay. Okay. So so then how did somebody get involved in New York City? Did you guys go there, do a show as Sing Out or something, and then they stayed and formed their own little groups there? Is that how?
you mean the local sing out?
Yeah, the local Sing Outs.
Okay, well that was a really interesting story. The basis of that was that there was the, and you've heard this from the others you've interviewed, Sing Out exploded. I mean, you'd go to a show, we'd have a show in some town with a little local high school, and you'd do a show, and all of a sudden, all these kids want to join. And you would find that we were growing over
Ah,
the course of the 66, early 67. Every time you went somewhere, you were adding people. And we literally, I think the first time we toured through the South, and I don't remember the exact period,
yeah.
but we literally would add a bus every 2 or 3 weeks.
Oh my
And the cast I
Lord.
was with at one point went from 3 buses to 6 buses in about 2 months.
Wow.
And obviously, this could not be maintained. So
No.
the leadership, and this was probably in the spring of 66, I believe, the leadership of Blanton Belk
Yeah.
and Dan Skuse and all these guys that were running things at that point realized that this can't be maintained. Why don't we start local sing outs?
Mm,
And you've probably heard this from others.
yeah.
And I was actually one of the first people to split off of the main cast
Okay.
when they went to Germany. I think what happened was the cast was going to Germany, Austria, and Spain,
Yeah.
and they needed to narrow down the cast. And I'm not sure. My recollection was they looked at kind of the troublemakers and they said, maybe you guys better stay behind and do something productive and let the rest of the cast go. So I was left behind and asked to help start local sing outs, which was probably the best thing that ever happened to me because I didn't fit the group mold very well.
Okay.
I was 21, 20 years old, 21, little rebellious.
There's a whole
And
lot of 21-year-olds who are a little rebellious.
yeah, I didn't really fit the MRA mold very well either.
Okay.
And so they left me behind and I started sing outs. And it was fantastic. It was the best thing that
Oh,
happened to me. I became responsible. I went to Little Rock, Arkansas with my best friend, who was also kind of rebellious, Bob Scott. And we set up a sing out in Little Rock, Arkansas. I had a blast. Our local sponsor there was a car dealership, and he gave me a Corvette to drive. I mean, what could be better
what
than
else
a
is
couple
better
of
for you?
21-year-old kids who were starting to sing out? And then you had 100 young, enthusiastic young local kids who looked up to us and got
Wow,
very excited about it. And it was great. And
that's
so
neat.
we
Okay.
started that. Then we uh, went to Cincinnati. I went several other places, but
That's
that was
okay.
my next 6 months
That
starting
that gives
singing.
me an idea of the whole transition of it. Because when I had people, oh, I was in Sing Out Kingsport, I was in Sing Out New York. I didn't have any idea how any of that transpired. All right. So when did you meet Terry?
Well, we were doing actually, I was doing advanced work at that point.
Okay.
I'd already finished the sing out thing and we'd started Cast C. And then I was doing advanced work in, and we actually traveled in the cast together. I didn't know her that well, but we ended up going on PR together to start
Okay.
programs I think we were in California, LA. We worked on a fundraiser there. So anyway, we worked
Yeah.
together on public relations, and this was probably 1970, 69, 70, and 70. And then we got together. I liked her, and so eventually
Okay.
we got together.
Okay. So, all right. So now we fast forward a little bit, a couple of years, and did you then like move to Tucson, start like get a job in the office? You know, how did that piece happen?
Okay, well, I got to tell you a quick,
Yeah.
interesting story to begin with. We'd gotten engaged. We were going to plan on 6 months, have a wedding, and we got a call from Belk, Mr.
Okay.
Belk,
Yep.
and somebody else, and they said, well, you all are engaged, but we've just gotten a big deal that we've been asked by Boeing to create a small group to go with the first 747 flights around the world and stopping in all the capitals. And we have been asked to take a small group, and we need a couple to lead this group. Would you consider moving your wedding up and getting married by two months from now? And we said, heck yes, we'll
To
do it.
travel around the world to all
Travel around the world, lead this small group performing in the capitals of the world with
wow.
first 747. So we said, absolutely. And we jumped on it. We got everything planned and we got married, and the
Wow.
trip was canceled.
No.
Yes. The trip was
I
canceled.
was like so
The
excited for
deal,
you.
the deal fell through. And I don't know whether it was a scheme to get us married. I don't know why. And we did end up leading a small group after that to a lot of fantastic tours. We had 2 more years in as a couple with casts, and we had a
Yeah.
great time. But
Oh my gosh. Here I was like, wow, what an adventure. And then it didn't happen.
and it didn't work out.
That's like
But
today's world. You know, you buy a ticket to go somewhere and you may or may not.
exactly. But then we traveled for 2 years with a cast. Our last year was fantastic. Small cast, went all over the world.
Wow.
30 people, just with Dale Penny was part of our
Part of
cast,
that
and
group. Wow.
just had a great trip. But frankly, we burned out at that point.
Ah,
I've been on the road on and off for about 5 years, 6 years. Terry traveled for years, and then we were a couple for 2 years on the road. We burned out.
yeah,
So I was going to leave. I informed people that we were getting out of here
we're done.
and go do be regular people, regular
Yeah,
couple.
yeah,
And we got the word to come to Tucson. We've got some job needs, and
yeah.
Terry worked in human resources, and I worked with Dan Scoos on booking tours.
Yeah.
Um,
Interesting. I, you know, people think that if you are, I think in anything relate to the travel industry, if you like to travel, oh, it'd be awesome to be on a cruise ship. Well, yeah, unless you're waiting on people every day, all day, and stuff like that, and you get one day off every 3 weeks or whatever it is. And so I think anybody who has ever traveled consistently knows that a night in a hotel room, and there's rock stars that have written songs about this, right? You know, that they don't even know what town they're in. They're just doing
right.
another show. So that's fascinating. So how did you stay with people then until the offices moved up to Denver in 94 or
Yeah, I did. I basically several times I was going to move on and do other things, and I wasn't threatening. I just said, I'm not making enough money, or
yeah,
we were making piddlings at that point,
yeah,
and by then I was like in my mid 20s, and so at some point I was going to quit and go to school and finish my degree. I'd only had a year or two in college worth
yeah,
of credits, and they would say, oh no, wait, come on, there are programs we can work out. And so
yeah,
then I'd stay and go to do a student abroad or a
yeah.
distance learning program,
Distance learning. Yeah.
And so I just stayed there. My main focus really from that point on when I moved to Tucson was the marketing, the tour management, scheduling of the tours. And so for the next really 14, let's
Wow.
see, from 72 until about 85, I was doing the marketing and promotion and fundraising for Up With People, and mainly in North America. Hans was doing it in Europe mainly, but
Yeah.
and I loved that. It was very exciting. We grew the organization tremendously
Yeah.
from that point on, and then I stayed, and then I was going to leave again, and some of the board members said I wanted to get my MBA, and some of the board members said, no, 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 you let us sponsor you to go to a very good Ivy League school and into an advanced management program, and you don't have to take 2 years off. We'll give you, 4 or 5 months off and go do that. So they sponsored me, and I went to Harvard Business School. So just about the time I was ready to leave,
Somebody
something came up that kept me there.
serendipitous, man, to
Yeah,
be.
exactly.
Wow.
Exactly.
So you're responsible. I can blame you for January of 1977 and how much time I spent in Texas.
You've heard this story so many times from so many people, especially during the bicentennial year.
And for the cast that I saw, it was the group that did Ohio. Tim Lane and that group who were like, there's another town in Ohio. But Blossom Center, everybody seemed to like that when they did the Blossom Center thing. But I didn't think I'd ever get out of Texas.
I my so I mean honestly, as I look back on my life,
Yeah.
that period of time planning the bicentennial year, Dan Skuse had left the organization about a year earlier
Okay.
and
Yeah.
unplanned, unexpectedly, and I got dumped with a job.
Wow.
And we had 3 casts, and there was rumors that we were going to try and do something big for the bicentennial year. And but I was now in charge of scheduling the tours. Well, we got $1 million grant from the Lilly
Yeah, I
Foundation
remember
to
that. That was
expand, and I was responsible with a team, obviously, of booking 500 cities during that year, the bicentennial year. And so for the next year and a half, well, I
wow.
was working with 20 staff out there running all over the country, and I was responsible for finding sponsors and booking 500 cities. So we did the hub spoke thing. We did
Yeah.
north in the summer, south in the winter,
Yeah.
and that's why you spent so much time in Texas.
It what's really funny to me is that when it was so different. So Caleb traveled in 2013. Did Phil do like 2009 or something like that? Do you remember somewhere along in there?
Yeah, it
Anyway,
was
he was
around
he was a
that
little
time.
bit ahead of Caleb.
Yeah.
And by then the tours were very different. And I even hear that the ABC 1, 2, 3 thing that happened during the bicentennial was just exhausting and they don't remember where they've been. And we periodically get together, like many casts do, and there's this guy and woman that talk about booking this town in Idaho. And I'm like, we didn't go there. I have a map that I drew. I kept a journal. We did too go there. And I'm like, we would
You
take a
didn't
boat.
know.
Like, who remembers if we went to that place? And they're like, yeah. And then and it is hysterically funny to see who even, and they were like, maybe you were sick. Maybe you flew. Just,
Donna, if you, I mean, I can't even tell you when you get $1 million from somebody and they say, we want you to do every city in America that you can possibly do in a year, and you have to figure out how to do it. And all of a sudden, people like were pulled out of cast to go and book tour,
yeah,
okay,
yeah,
go book the Northeast and go book the West and go.
yeah.
And so I had, John Parker and George Alexander and Jose and all these people out booking.
Jose Rios. Yeah,
Yeah, and
yeah.
and sending stuff into me about where we had to go. we had a system set up. We
Yeah.
put a price on every city. But the challenge was what ended up happening was your experience, which is we're just every 3 days in a
Mhm.
new city, a new town in
Yeah.
Texas for 3 months, 2 months.
Yeah. Yeah.
You
You know,
know?
we traveled all over. We learned, we switched from 200 years and just a baby to sing a song. We had essentially the same show, but took out the bicentennial songs. We learned that in some town in Texas. And then we left for Mexico. That was our international back when you could still take a train, in Mexico and everything. And one group had a very short time in Venezuela, and one group had a short time in Canada, and then a small group went to Europe. That's January of 77. And it is it's what everybody says, and you don't believe it at the time that the people make the places, that it doesn't matter. But okay, I just got the 10-minute warning sign. Tell me, so when Caleb traveled, they did 6 months at a time, cost a small fortune, but they were in towns for a week.
Right.
And their experience, albeit the same, was also very different from the perspective of really getting to know their host families, staying in touch with their host families because we have modern technology and you can watch the kids grow up online, right? Those kinds of things. Tell me what you think about that type of program, because I think it was great compared to the go, check in, do a show, leave.
Absolutely. I think we evolved. I mean, the bicentennial was unique. You lived
Yeah,
through this unique challenge. We very quickly learned that you had to increase the value of the experience, both for the student and for the community. You had to increase the time, which
right.
meant you had to raise more money
Yeah,
from that community. So it was a challenge getting to that point of extending the period of time. That was the goal, but small towns still couldn't afford that. So
right.
it evolved over the next, from the 70s into the 80s, evolved more into the longer period of time.
Yeah, yeah.
And because of the big change that happened between the bicentennial year and the in 1990
90s.
was we started getting very big corporate sponsors.
Interesting.
That was a core marketing strategy that I had, was analyze when these companies celebrate big events like a centennial or
50
a 50
years,
year
100 years
anniversary,
of, yeah.
75. And we researched, I sent Marcy Copas to the library for a week researching when these companies had incorporated. And she came back with this massive list of General Motors, General Electric,
Yeah,
Sun Company, et cetera. Every year we were able to get a major corporate tour based on that one core strategy.
that's
That to me, in my recollection, is probably the key strategy of how Up With People grew after the bicentennial, how it maintained that
yeah,
growth and
yeah,
size.
yeah. I only traveled the 1 year, but then I did costumes for a couple of summers and served on the board of governors. It's the reason that I have more international friends, because in the bicentennial, there's only 8 or 9, but I remember the GE song because some cast was singing it somewhere, General Electric, whatever,
Yep.
doing that. So that's interesting. Okay, so I know your son Phil. Do you have other children? No,
Just
just
Phil,
just Phil. Okay,
two
okay.
grandchildren.
And two grandchildren. Yes, I have met them at a party at Caleb's,
Okay.
because that group brings their kids. If they, with whatever
They
they're
do.
doing, they can be just hanging out, they can be watching TV, or they can be playing a game, and the kids are there. So okay, but I don't remember their names. I know Sophie, but what are the kids' names?
Theo and Adeline.
Adeline?
Theo and Adeline.
Theo. Okay.
Adeline.
Adeline. Okay.
Adeline.
And they're
They're in
both,
Sweden right now.
are
They're in
they, and they're
Sweden.
both, oh, that's why Phil and Caleb had time together, because
Yep.
she's
They're
got the
all in.
kids. Four.
Sophie's working from Sweden for the summer and brings the kids, and they're having a great time.
Nice. Nice. That's a great life. It was fun to talk to our kids, my son, your son, about their relationship and Up With People and Post Up With People, and what draws you or keeps you together after there's nothing, when I think about the world and how many people graduate from the U of A in 1 year, the fact that we still are a community of 23,000 or less as we age and people pass away, that's not a lot. So there is this absolute kinship and I hate natural trust. Like if somebody from 1990 needs a place to crash here, I would probably let them without knowing much about them. And that may or may not be smart, but I just think it's part of our
It
world.
is. It
And
is.
and
The other thing, just to add to that, the other element of people that have been touched by Up With People that we don't really know how many there are. We don't have a list. We don't are the host families.
oh yeah.
And there are thousands and thousands of those beyond the 25, 23,000.
Yeah.
And then the audiences. I
Yeah.
run into people all the time that say, "Oh yeah, you came to my high school," and they sing the song.
Yep.
I'm going, "What?" And
Yeah.
they're my age, going,
Where
"What?"
I live, of course, close to the border, I always ask people if they grew up in Mexico, do they know Viva la Gente? And then literally I can sing so many songs in other languages that people think I speak that language. I sang the Chinese one time. He goes, "Oh, you speak Mandarin?" No, I
No.
sing that song. You know? and and do that, and I think it's about a river. Like
Well, we travel a lot still. We're going to Italy. We go to Italy a lot.
Yeah.
And in Italy, I sing the Italian medley. Whenever if I'm in Rome, I say quando, I sing the
Yeah.
Rome song or
Yeah.
quando, anyway,
It's
people love it. They can't believe it.
Yeah, yeah. No, that's fascinating. And there are still many, many people here who know Viva la Gente and stuff. So
Yeah.
it's fun to do that. So, well, thank you for taking the time today. I really, really wanted to hear a little bit of that history that I know nothing about. And I think that there's probably a lot of alumni who have no idea. Either they've never even heard MRA or they've never even heard Sing Out or they've heard it and have no clue. So
They don't have any idea what it is.
yeah, I think it's helpful. When Heidi was here, we talked a little bit about that. We talked about how you don't know what you don't know. So to make any kind of judgment or comment or anything about a person's feelings that was either part of MRA or part of Sing Out or whatever, it's not fair. It's not fair for somebody from 1987 to tell somebody from 1965 what they should be thinking.
Right. Well, and she knows a lot because she
Yes.
has the real MRA family experience
She does.
that I
Yeah.
don't feel like I have peripheral knowledge.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
So anyway, well, thank you very much. I will let you know when I make this live, and,
Okay.
and share it with you. I've got a couple of others that I've done. I've talked to a lot of men and I'm squeezing a couple girls in here, a couple
Okay,
women.
good. Well, thank you, Donna. Great to see you. Love your painting. Keep it
Oh,
up.
thank you.
I'm
Yours,
still painting, so
yours
we should
too. One of these,
share. We
yeah,
should do some share sometime.
that's true. Next time I get up that way, I'll maybe try to get in touch and see you guys in
All
person.
right,
If you're
great.
there, if you're not traveling the
I'll
world.
be here. I'll be
Yeah.
here.
Awesome. Thank you,
Thank you
Steve.
so much.
All right.